So I am entering these scripts to create my database and tables. So I'm going to call my database my fictional business. And if you want to enter all of the commands at the same time, you actually have to put the word go in between. So I'm creating the database, and then I probably should tell it I'm going to use that database. And then I am creating the table. So the first table, I basically looked at my spreadsheet, and I have a primary key, and I've keyed in the different column names and specified what the data types were. And if something is required, I put not null. Whatever you're going to make for the primary key cannot be null. So down here, I'm specifying that artwork ID is my primary key, and that can't be null, so I did put not null there. Other things that I'm going to require being entered, I put not null. And for things that may be entered at a later date, I did not put not null. I'm going to allow them to be null and modified later. Then I get to my next table, which is customers, and it's going to be kind of the same process where I'm going to say create table customers. And so I've got the ID, which is going to be the primary key. It's integer, not null. Name. Now I could split this out, first name and last name. Technically, I probably should. So I'll just do first name. And that's variable character. Make that 20. Not null. And then we'll do last name, variable character, make that 30, not null. And then we get into zip code, which is going to be a foreign key. So they do need to key that in. So zip code, believe it or not, is variable character because there's no reason to ever do arithmetic on zip codes. So they end up being character. Maybe not null. And then I've got email, which I will allow to be null. And then I've got the cell phone, variable character. And let's see, I'll just make that 15 to be safe. And that's the last thing that I have in the table. So now I need to indicate what my primary key is, and that is ID. So basically I'm creating the tables, and then once the tables are created, I'm going to create foreign key constraints, and I'm also going to do the indexing on the foreign keys. So this first step is basically just to get the database out there and to get my tables created with their primary keys. So I'm going to go ahead and enter zip code and the rest of my tables and pause the video. All right, so I've gone through and added all of my tables and specified what is the primary key. One thing you do need to be careful of is if you have foreign keys, like I do in order details, you need to make sure the data types are the same as the primary key in the table you're connecting to. So in order details, order ID is a foreign key. I'm going to use it to connect to ID in orders. So both are integers, so that should be fine. Inventory number, I've made an integer. We're going to connect order details to my inventory up here. to the artwork ID, and they're both integers, so that should be fine. So when you're going through, you do need to make sure that you're thinking of what your foreign keys are, the table that they're connecting, and the column they are connecting to, because the data types have to be the same. So in this order table, I've got location ID and customer ID as foreign keys. So location ID is integer, customer ID is integer. So when I look at my location table, I'm connecting to the primary key ID, which is an integer. And if I look at my customer table, I'm connecting to ID, which is also an integer. And this is why it's really important that your tables are correctly defined in the first milestone. Because if you don't correctly define your tables in this milestone, then when you create them, things are not going to work out correctly. So at this point, I am ready to create the tables, and I'm going to relate them with foreign keys and indexing in the second step. So I'm going to do these in 2 steps. So the first step is to create my database, get all my tables created with their keys. So I'm going to go ahead and execute this. I'll try this again. All right, so it did run. Sometimes if you have something highlighted and you try to run your command, it will give you an error. So you just kind of have to click and run it again. You should have all of your tables created successfully. If there was an issue creating any of your tables, what I suggest that you do, let me refresh this, is find your database, which mine is right here, and you can just right click and delete it. And I'm going to delete this test one that I did. Okay. And if you delete the database, then you can fix the problem and recreate it. Because at this point, you don't have any data in any of the tables, so it does not hurt to delete it and just run the commands again. Okay. Otherwise, you're just going to be dealing with error after error after error. So what you want is a clean run. So if I wanted to rerun this, I would just delete this one. And if it ever comes back, I will run it again, and it'll just recreate everything. So one thing to keep in mind if you're going to drop the database is that you have to activate a different one first, or it won't let you. So at this point, it's not active. You should be able to delete it, and it's gone. So then I can just recreate the thing. Okay, and you are going to need to turn in this script. So I would save this. And you can just call it final project milestone 2, and I would call it database and tables. Okay, and then you're going to save that to a location where you can easily find it.